Perfect. So, hi everybody, David Nour. You may recognize my voice from the co-hosting of the Sales Community podcast, Tech Sales Insight podcast with Seidl. It's good to see some folks I know already, and it's great to meet new participants as well. My goal in the next hour is to hopefully push you to think about a different approach in telling your organization, your story. Because as you'll see, one of the things we figured out through this pandemic is our attention spans are getting shorter. Most people you're going to engage don't want to or need to know everything you know. They need to, what do I need to know to make a decision? Buy from you, support you, invest in you, join you. So we're big believers of how do we say more with less? There's enormous value in brevity. How do we say more with less? Much more succinctly, much more visually. And instead of you sit there, you be quiet, let me tell you how smart I am. How do I create an environment where you're going to want to come into the tent? And the sooner I bring you into this canvas, into this tent, the sooner you're going to buy in on the direction we should go together. And I think that's an evolution in revenue generation, particularly net new growth opportunities of, I think, the days of walking in with, we're the smartest people in the room. And let me tell you how great our stuff is to, how do we really co-create some success together? So I've been doing webinars for 10 years. I think days of talking heads are over. So we're going to do some breakout rooms. We're going to do an interactive poll. We're going to do a bunch of other things to make this truly an interactive online roundtable. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. One, we're recording this, and we'll share the recording of the session with you. I'm a content presenter, so I present a lot of content in a short amount of time. Two, we're fairly active on various social channels. And later today at 5 Eastern, we're going to do a Twitter chat on this topic. So there's the handle, @DavidNour, @Randy Seidl, @Sales, CMTY, short for community. And we're using the hashtag Your10X. And the intent of these series is to really bring, hopefully, 10X the value of your time, effort, and investment. So this is one of several in the series. We plan to do one each month, the third Thursday of each month, all of them 3 Eastern. So we'll send out calendars. It'll be posted on salescommunity.com/events, salescommunity.com/events, a good place to go. And as you can see, I'm going to cover a lot of ground from kind of my body of work that I'm learning more and more from clients that's most impactful to them. Very quickly, pre-pandemic, I did 62 global speaking engagements in 19. I was on the road a couple hundred days a year. And my passion is to engage audiences. So whether it's a group of board members or executives on the stage, or I usually get off the stage and go interact with the audience. In the post-pandemic world, this has become my world. My kids keep asking me, can you launch a satellite with that setup, Dad? So I double, when this thing happened in March, I was speaking for Samsung in Dallas, and I figured I'm not going to get, we could, Tucker, if you could help me, let's mute folks that way would be great. So I was speaking for Samsung in February in Dallas. And when this thing hit, I'm like, I'm not going to get on the road for a while. So I doubled down. This is a 4K camera you're looking at, and lights and monitors. And we've been able to maneuver not just our digital presence, but our capabilities. And I'm going to show you some examples of our work that we used to do in person. We brought it all digital. And all the data, all the research that I found, all the conversations that I'm having with my global clients point to work from anywhere is going to continue. It's still, even with a vaccine, it's going to be some time that we feel comfortable again, traveling again and getting together again. So I'm nudging Randy Seidls of the world to kind of elevate their digital presence and get more comfortable using some of these tools that are just going to, I think, become more omnipresent in what we do and how we do it. So this is an example of some of the work we do. I'm going to show you this in more detail. We've also created this innovation sprint where I take a group of your folks through a 12 to 16 week period and really force them to think differently. about go-to-market, about market segment, about how do we go deeper and wider in these accounts and in these verticals. And this is the kind of work that we do. I'm blessed. I've written, just finished writing book number 11. This is my Star Wars trilogy. So relationship economics was one of the first ones. It was the first one. And it was all about how to be more intentional, more strategic about the relationships you choose to invest in. Most recently, Co-Create was all about how do you co-create new value, new market opportunities with some of your most valuable relationships. Curvebender is really at the intersection of future of work, strategic relationships, and what I call non-linear growth. And I'm happy to share more insights with that as we go. I also have a podcast of my own, Curvebenders. We've got about 50,000 or folks listeners on a weekly basis. I interview thought leaders, CEOs, executives. And as a bonus, we also put the sales community up there for our audience to kind of learn about it as well. I don't know if you know this, but I'm in a gang. This is my gang. Wendy and I will celebrate 25 years this next year. I have a daughter who's a first year at Georgia Tech, chemistry major, and I've got a 6'2" son. If he didn't look just like me, I'd be a little concerned about who the dad is, but he's a big lacrosse player. And I also have 2 crazy dogs, but that's my family. And this is what I do for fun. You don't have to get on a bike and go really fast, but when I put the earplugs in and the helmet on, nobody's calling, nobody's texting, nobody wants to Zoom. And it gives me a chance to really think about the business. And I don't know, I coach a lot of executives. I don't know anybody that can burn the candle at both ends. So you don't have to do this. Yours could be golf, yours could be yoga, could be, backcountry skiing, but we all need a chance to disengage. And by the way, mathematically proven, if you get away from a problem, you have a dramatically better chance of solving it when you come back to it. So I would encourage you, a lot of us are struggling with just kind of digital fatigue, with Zoom fatigue. So for yourself, for your team, be intentional about disengaging. Be intentional about getting away from it all. So when you do come back to it, you can come back with passion and conviction. So that's a little about me. I want to make sure we get to know you better. So do me a favor, take out your smartphones. Take out your smartphone. A lot more fun if you play along. This is a tool. It's an interactive polling tool that I use. So go ahead and go to Menti, open up a browser and go to menti.com, and top of the page, you're going to be asked for a code. It's right there, top of the screen you're looking at. So just open up a browser. Again, menti.com. Please enter your code right there, 4660080. First question, what city are you joining us from? So just type it in and it shows up. There we go. Santa Cruz, LA, Fort Worth, Campbell, I don't know where that is, Union City, Birmingham, Nantucket, Rochester, beautiful. Boston, there we go. So this is a good chance to let's look at the global footprint of the Randy Seidl relationships, right? Raleigh, very cool. Silicon Valley, great. NYC, nice. Good. So let's move on. Next question. Next, and for those of you jumping in, we'll keep going. So next question, here we go. Your role, impact, frontline contributor, you manage a team, do you lead an organization, or do you govern on a board? Your primary role. This is dot voting. There you go. So we got mostly frontline contributors. Great. God bless you. Bag carrying. Love it. Manage a team, lead an organization, few board members. Great. All right. And then I've got, keep going. We'll keep going. I want to make sure your vote gets counted. Again, the code, if you're looking for it, it's top of the page, and we'll use this throughout the session. Next question. Next question. Here we go. Next question. What do you believe strategy visualization means? Just a short answer. What comes to mind when you hear, let's jump into strategy visualization. See success, what good looks like. Nice. Graphical view of where we're going. Great. Whiteboard, cocktail drafts, and execution. Nice. Taking future trends into account. Good. Visual storytelling. Love that. What do you want to take the customer relationship? Beautiful. Have a solid plan. Yes. Ability to deliver a message in visibly pleasing manner. Yes. Impactful way to engage. Love it. Feel it, touch it. Yep. Break down how to accomplish a goal. Great. It means we've got a consultant engaged. Wait, hold on. Is that a crack? Is that all right? I'll simplify it. I'll take it. We'll use simpler words. Taking the plan to reality, impactful way. Good. Yeah, those are all great answers. And you can stop checking email. We'll come back to Menti, but it's a good way to gauge you as we go through this. So thanks for doing that. So in relationship economics, I talked a lot about how to be more intentional in the relationships you choose to invest in. Make no mistake about it, it's a choice. Every single day you have a choice of the relationships you choose to invest in. Here's the painful truth you need to hear. An average individual can proactively manage about 100 to 150 relationships. Which ones? And how do you know? And if you're only focused on the people that are on your immediate pipeline, respectfully, somebody else is dating your girlfriend, right? You've got relationships on the periphery that you're neglecting. We make to-do lists. Very few people make stop doing lists. We make relationship lists. Very few people make lists of relationships they've neglected. At the right-hand side of this, a lot of people, and Seidl lives this, are very good at relationship creation. They struggle in bridging that to relationship capitalization. That's what co-create is about. How do two or more parties come together and co-create something that they wouldn't be able to do by themselves? They wouldn't be able to reach those market opportunities themselves. In Curve Benders, I'm bringing all that together and giving it a future of work lens. So we've identified 15 forces that I believe will dramatically disrupt your future. This pandemic is one example. And most executives I'm talking to have figured out how to get around this. Their concern is the next one. What if it was cyber? God forbid, what if it's a natural disaster? Can you imagine in the last 9 months if we didn't have internet access, right? So resilience to me is this elasticity. How are you preparing? How will you be able to force through it? And how will you come out the other side stronger? And curve benders are relationships that will accelerate your learning, accelerate your growth for you to continue to remain relevant even with all those challenges at you. I'm blessed. I work with a lot of global clients. And even with these mature brands, I'm sure none of this happens in your organization. We keep running into 6 unique challenges. You ready? Confusing vision and direction. Not sure where we're going or how we're going to get there. Culture that inhibits innovation. Listen, we've always done it that way. Or I did that in my last 3 jobs, right? Why shouldn't we do differently? Resistance to change. I know what works. This is the way it works. This is the way we're going to do it. Misaligned initiatives. How often have you seen this? We ask for A and we compensate B. Audiences can't understand where we're going. Where are you going with this, right? How do we engage them? How do we, and I love the Donald Miller comment. If you confuse, you lose. And I said it earlier, I believe way too many corporate stories are unnecessarily complicated, overcomplicated. How do we make them simple, easy, fast? Simple to understand, easy to internalize, fast to apply. Because if you make me waste a lot of cycles trying to figure out how you benefit me, I'm going to disengage. Last but not least, unclear as to our why. I've met a lot of very competent executives and they're passionate about their field and they'll jump right into, let me tell you how our security solution is better than the 75,000 other ones that are out there. I'm saying this respectfully. It's not about you. I don't care about you. What I care about is how am I better off because of you. So Let's do one of those optical exams. We go to optometrist and you get an eye exam. So which one is more clear? Option A, death by PowerPoint. You sit there, you be quiet. Let me tell you how smart I am. Over 178 slides in the next 30 minutes. Woohoo, says nobody ever. This particular client was owned by a German headquarters, so Germany had to add their solution to it. The CEO sent me a 44-page PowerPoint, and his name is Rich. We've actually become friends since then. I called him, said, Rich, I think I'm pretty intelligent, but I'm on slide 6, and I don't understand what you're trying to say, where you're going, how we're going to get there, what's my role? And he says, okay, smart guy, except he used a different word than guy. What do you think is the answer? And I said, what if it was one page? He said, there is no way. Our business is way too complicated and we've got all these dynamics. I said, humor me. What if it was just one page? Or we can go with the death by PowerPoint that nobody reads, nobody looks at, or we can go with option B. What you're looking at is the 44-page PowerPoint translated into one page. And I've got neuroimaging data that proves that our brains process visuals 60,000 times faster than we do text. Yet we're hell-bent on emailing people war and peace. Right? That nobody reads, that nobody looks at, right? Versus, what if your story was one page? And I don't know if you noticed, at the center, it was all about how do we create exceptional customer experiences. Because the teams that I'm observing are doubling down on that in this pandemic. The teams that I'm observing are saying, how do we simplify our story? How do we get to the core essence of why we do what we do? And it's exciting to watch that initial overarching story become the organization's rallying cry. So now it's in their new hire approach. This is the way they innovate. This is the way they bring people on board. And what started as an internal effort has been translated in 8 different languages in 126 offices. It has blown up the size of a wall. And now they've begun to talk to their clients in this way. And they're bringing the clients into the story. So we've got a process, a proven, we've done over 100 of these projects for global clients, and we've got a process that pretty much says, here's where we are, here's where we're going, here's how to try us. I've always believed, we're not in the ice cream business, but if we can pilot or prototype or give somebody a taste of what we do, they're going to be much more excited about launch and rollout. But give them a glimpse, de-risk that launch and rollout. Here's how this is going to roll out. This is how we're going to deploy it. This is what to expect, right? And at each step, you cannot lose sight of the Fab 5, which is, why are we doing this? Who's the audience? What's the outcome we're after? What story do we want to tell? And how we're going to roll this out. And we do that throughout each step. This is actually a class that I teach in the executive education program at both Emory as well as Vanderbilt. And pre-pandemic, we'd get together in a conference room. And post-pandemic, we've all gone online. So we use a digital whiteboard. And we jump in through this iterative process. And as I'm asking questions and if I'm clarifying, I have a creative director. These are not clip arts. These are custom illustrations that he starts to capture it. And my point here is, look at how we start, which everybody on this call can do, right? Which is, we can all do stick figures. We can all do circles. So let me understand that. Is this right? I have an iPad app that I can do it in real time on a screen. So when you start to visually capture ideas, you start to bring people in. I used to say, the minute somebody takes the marker, they have the microphone. So I would get in a whiteboard and I would start draw ideas. And you've seen this. Leader says, oh, let me grab that. Right? The minute they grab that marker, they've got the microphone. Now they see themselves as part of the story. Now they see themselves, or even if I'm completely off base, even if I'm wrong, They take an eraser, they erase what I captured, and they clarify it. But now look at what's happened. The dynamic of let me sell you on an idea becomes let's bring you in and let's do this together. Let's kind of whiteboard together what this could look like. And what happens is you typically come up with a central theme. You come up with a lighthouse. You come up with a why. You come up with the reason we're doing what we're doing. And you start to build around that idea. So in this case, if we want to create an exceptional customer experience, external to the organization, internal to the organization, who's going to impact it the most? By the way, you're not looking at Picasso's, right? This is what I'm saying. Everybody can do this. You can start by just rough concepting it, just sketching it. And what we do is we then come in and we add additional colors and add additional graphics. And inevitably, everybody wants to throw a ton of stuff in that visual. So we start to trim back. Again, they don't want to know everything you know. What's the essence? What's the, Randy Seidl's favorite word of mine that I use? Pithy, right? What's the most succinct way we can get that point across? Because that's how they're going to engage, right? So then we start to tighten it up. We go through a revised concept. We started with these 3 platters as 7 little bubbles in. As you can imagine, it just gets overwhelming. It's just like, what do you want me to look at? So the process becomes one of pruning, and it looks something like this. At ThyssenKrupp, we're not in the elevator and escalator business. We're fundamentally in the exceptional experience business. Let me tell you how we're going to get there. Number 1, we're going to build quality solutions. 2, we're going to be a great place to work. 3, we're going to effectively communicate. Now, let me step out of character. I've never met a company that says we're going to build crappy products, we're going to be an awful place to work, and we don't want to talk to anybody. So if you're going to put out motherhood and apple pie, you better back it up with credibility components. And that's where these bullet points come in. So let me give you an example. You saw the date on this was 2015. At that time, these guys had a controller board that would go inside elevators and escalators and remembered what parts got replaced, the service intervals, what's most likely to fail, and a series of algorithms with a high degree of confidence would give you predictive maintenance requirements. That's a $100 million business today. They're selling preventive maintenance services. That's where this type of a tool can help you. And at that time, it was aspirational because they only had about, I want to say 20 units installed. But they saw the value of what that could do. Instead of waiting for elevators, escalators to break down, they got ahead of this, and IoT was just taken off. They got ahead of it and built a whole separate, we worked with them on building a separate business unit that sold preventive maintenance. So now you back up the high-level, macro-level stories with credibility pieces, and this becomes your story. So let's go back to Menti. Let's go back to Menti. I have a question of you. Let's go back to Menti. How often are you thinking about, this is a slider. So you actually move the slider.
Hey, of course, sorry, we had some people that have joined, I think, since we did the last Menti.
No problem. So we're using an interactive polling tool. So if you could take out your smartphone and just open up a browser, you go to Menti. It's on top of the page, Menti, MENTI.com, and just type in that code. That code is top of the page, 4660080. And this is a slider, so you can slide it. My question of you is, how often are you thinking about some of these things? Not at all to all the time. So getting 2020 behind me. Oh, hallelujah. Let's go. Rethinking our go-to-market strategy. Yeah. Net new growth opportunities, whether it's source, channel, segments. Elevating my people, talent, capabilities. And just hit submit at the bottom. So look at that. You figured out how to live with this pandemic. Good. Now you're rethinking our go-to-market strategy in 21. Beautiful. Net new growth. Love it. Love it. As I said earlier, I don't know anybody that can cut their way to growth. So we can, yeah, we could sell more of the existing stuff to the existing people. How do we go find net new growth opportunities? And the challenge with net new growth is typically a new story, interesting story, some other way of, you have to convey what's new about it. Where's the new opportunity? And the biggest mistake I see most people make is death by PowerPoint, death by memos, death by, oh, good Lord, this is going to take, you lost me at hello 40 minutes ago, right? So elevating my people, talent, capabilities, beautiful. So if you genuinely are after net new growth, if you're thinking about, we've got to go to market very differently, this may be an interesting way to do that. Let's go to the next question. And again, I'll encourage you to jump in with us. What are the 3 barriers to more innovative selling at your place? Is it risk avoidance? Is it zero-sum thinking that if we win, somebody else has got to lose? Is it tradition and culture? Is it leadership or maybe lack of? Is it internal system, structure, decision-making? By the way, I can't see your individual responses. So just pick 3, and then at the bottom, hit submit. And what I love about this is not some stale survey. This is your own colleagues, right? On this call, right? Look at that. 25%, 26%, internal system, structure, and decision-making. Wait, isn't that what some of you sell? Kind of some of these systems and structures and, right? And whose job is the decision-making part, right? So this is the kind of stuff we've got to overcome if we're going to engage clients differently, if we're going to meet them very differently. I think everybody on the call would agree, clients are getting increasingly more sophisticated. So the old school day of selling, the way we all grew up selling, is evolving. And you have to evolve how you engage, how you influence. Look at the top 2, internal system, structure, decision-making, and risk avoidance. We can't possibly try anything new, but we want that client to buy our new stuff, right? So do you talk about innovation in your place because it's cool and sexy and jazzy, and it's really more innovation theater than real innovation? Or you're actually thinking about doing things differently? Because I struggle to see how people are going to remain relevant, kind of doing the same thing they've always done when the market is changing all around us, right? So this would be a good time. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. This would be a really good time we're going to use the breakout rooms. There's a lot of really bright people on this call, and I don't even begin to pretend I've got all the answers. We're going to create breakout rooms into smaller groups. And what we want you to do is, I want you to go into, we're going to make small groups of 3, 4 people, 5 people. Talk about one thing you're going to do differently this next year. The lessons you may have learned from this year, just quickly, right? We're going to spend a few minutes on this. One thing, I want to make this interactive. I want to make it engaging. One thing, one lesson you learned this year, one thing you're going to do differently. So here we go. I'm going to start the breakout rooms. We're going to automatically assign, let's do about, 4 or 5 people per room, right? So here we go. I'm going to start. I'm going to give you, I've got 3:32 Eastern. Let's do 8 minutes, 8 minutes. So just go around, talk about one lesson you've learned, one thing you're going to do differently. So here we go. I'm going to open all the rooms. Go ahead and jump in, and then I'll ask you to come back in a few minutes. Think and lead differently. And you can't just talk about innovation. A lot of people do that. They just talk about it. That's great. How do you model it? How do you model the right behaviors, particularly for your team, that says, yeah, I'm open to us thinking about this differently? Or how do we put a team aside to think about that differently, right? So as you can imagine and appreciate, the story I just shared about ThyssenKrupp, the challenge doesn't end there, right? And I'm sure what I'm about to show you does not happen in your organization, but does anybody have any of these 36 tab spreadsheets? I call them the big uglies, right? With our finance friends, with all due respect, I'm convinced nobody looks at these spreadsheets other than people who create them, right? And of course we have, project plans, and we have all kinds of dependencies, and What if all of that came off of the same visuals? What if we incorporated a visual storytelling culture that says we're going to focus on a certain set of iconographies that regardless of what initiative we launch, they're all going to come off of that same page. So now you take one story and you visually blow it out and you create job aids and you create, we did this for a client where we created a handout that they should kind of have with them, right? Or this one, right? Seidl's going to remember this. There's a loop and there's laminated cards, right? But now you're nurturing a visual culture, a visual environment. And now we're all telling the same story or a very consistent story. Here's a data point that might be really useful to you. The last research that I found says if you want anything to be remembered and repeated, it needs to be reinforced 7 times. not repetitive. If you kept telling me the same thing, my eyes are going to roll over. But if it's reinforced, if I see it, if I hear it, if I get immersed in it 7 times, that's when it's remembered and when it's repeated. You want to know why? We have the attention span of a goldfish. There's a lot that's competing for our mind share and wallet share, and that is as true inside the organization as it is your buyers. So when Hilton wants to recruit stronger millennials, instead of walking in, I kid you not, they would go and say, we were the first brand that had color TVs. I'm like, they're not watching your TVs. Why would they care? We were the first brand that had room service. I'm like, they're not eating in your hotels. So instead of all about Hilton, we made it about these, I got to stop calling them kids, but these kids through school, right? Freshman year, let's figure out where the dead people buildings are. Sophomore year, let's figure out an externship. Junior year, let's clean up and resumes and learn how to interview. Senior year, let's build a management development program. When Hilton committed to bringing veterans in and taking them through a transition and opening doors to the hospitality for them. When Intercontinental, you're going to love this one, Intercontinental Hotels, the minute you sign a deal to be a franchisee, to the time you open a property, 11 different business units would touch that franchisee. And here's the shocker, they wouldn't talk to each other. So a group would show up on site to train that franchisee on the hotel management system, and the technology wasn't there. So now the franchisee is thinking, WTF, don't you guys talk to each other, right? KPMG, showing the global footprint risk for their clients. Tupperware, showing how they're going to recruit 1 million new sellers to add $1 billion to the top line revenue, including opening Apple-like stores called studios where you can go in and experience the product. This is a company called Oceaneering. They do subsea floor infrastructure, but they're also in government, they're in space, they're in energy, they're in material handling, and their project management center of excellence is the glue between all that. This is Cox, of how they bring field technicians back in and teach them how to become subject matter experts. Specific to your world, what if I showed you a better way to talk about a metro network? What if we talked differently about the impact of data? What if we showed a process of what happens and where the risk is? Because people are visual and your story is going to resonate a lot more. I don't know what a soap server is. I don't want to know what a soap server is. I know what tunnels are. I know how to get beyond the firewall. So how do we tell a story that's simple, easy, fast, simple to understand, easy to internalize, fast to act on? Here's a centered network excellence. So let's go back to Menti. I have a very serious question in Menti. Right now that I must ask. Are you having fun? Because if you're not having fun, it's over between us. I'm leaving. Are you all right? Yeah. Good. Thanks for doing that. All right. So
you just hard code that in, I bet.
Yeah. I did hard code that in. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So these also become job aids. Imagine, you remember flying. We would get in these things called airplanes and we'd go from city to city to go see clients and prospects. You remember the safety card, if you ever looked at one? You remember how many words were in there? Yeah, not too many. Why? Because visuals are an international language. People will see, understand a poster that says, set up the buffet this way, not the other way. They'll understand mouse pads, do this, not this. They'll understand visuals about how, in this case, Dell Healthcare Solutions impacts a hospital. Not a lot of words, but it shows where and how they show up, right? Trek has created bicycles where the tubes, right, all the cables run inside the tube. If I'm a technician, how do I figure out how to work on it? So every facet of your business that is unnecessarily overcomplicated, I would submit can be simplified through a set of visuals. And you can tell a much simpler, much more succinct story. So one client actually used our visuals for their trade show booth. Another client wrapped their service vehicles with our visuals, right? There's no limit to what you can do in conveying a visual story. What if you had to train your channel partners about how a process gets done and what that distribution looks like and how things should, the ecosystem, and how things should be set up? And as I said, the beautiful part about this is we've gotten pretty good at doing these in 30 days or less. So, right, we've got a digital whiteboard. We bring the right people together, and you do this as well. And again, the visuals you see, they're not magical. We always start with sketches, and you can too. My point here is start to go. Remember back in the napkin days where we used to just draw for somebody? Here's what we're thinking. What if we went back to that? What if we simplified how we engaged others? And we create different iterations, and people give feedback, and the final product becomes something that everybody, a rallying cry. Everybody gets it. Everybody gets behind it. One of my clients is the chief procurement officer at Humana. It's a $58 billion annual spend. He just sent me an email. An internal newsletter went out to a whole bunch of employees that had the visual in front of the page. Everybody got it with one glimpse. So final couple Menti questions. Final couple Menti questions for you. Give me a takeaway. I've shared a lot with you. Give me one takeaway. What resonated with you from this approach? Just type in a short answer. Use visuals. Yes. Simplify. Hallelujah. Visualization is key. Amen. One-page visuals. Yes. Keep it simple, please. Talk, write less. Yes. Got to get my head together with visuals. Yeah. Bringing my inner artist to management. Yes. I believe storytelling is a new leadership competency. So I know those of you on this call who didn't paint on the gray hair, I know you get it. My question of you is, how is this cascading through the rest of your team? How are you coaching and mentoring, particularly remote, your team to do less of death by PowerPoint and more of getting people involved with visuals? Because if you get them involved with visuals, you get buy-in faster. They feel like they're part of the solution. They're not being sold to, they're part of, let's co-create something together, right? Death by PowerPoint to brief visuals. Yes. Tell story with visuals. Tell succinct stories that resonate with visuals. We live in an emoji world. So give me one emoji about how you feel. Was this, I can put it to use, really enjoyed it, all good. I got distracted, not much value. So give us one emoji. Good. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. You can just keep voting there. I'm going to final couple of things I want to show you. I'm a big Gary Hamel fan. So let me pause for a second and have you read that. strategic planning isn't some calendar driven process. You got to see COVID. You got to see this pandemic as an impetus to rethink, reimagine, reinvent key parts of your business. And your go-to-market strategy, your revenue generation engine, I would submit could use some simplifying, could use some clarifying. And if you don't get buy-in internally, how will you ever transfer that, translate that to external buyers, channel partners, people that have their own language, their own approach, their own ways of talking about you? Imagine leaving a laminated piece behind. Imagine creating a visual on that internal portal they come to. Imagine sending on 7 times. People have to see it, hear it, experience it to be remembered and repeated. How will you think and lead differently? So let me pause. There's by the way, my contact info. If there's anything I can do to help, any friend of Randy Seidl is a friend of mine. Please reach out. I'm happy to talk to you, help however I can. But let me pause. Questions, comments, insults. As long as you don't drag my Middle Eastern heritage in, we'll remain friends. So what questions can I answer for you?
Just quick commercial or ask is if in the chat, a lot of you have been putting some great comments. If you can just put in any feedback in there, we really appreciate it. Thanks for doing that. But anyways, as Nour